Welcome to Lost in Revision. All of our content is public domain, literature, fairy tales, and folklore. Our goal is to at least break even to cover our expenses, so any support that you can offer to help us reach that goal helps keep this podcast going and you entertained. All of our music is by Nathan Hubble and is used with his permission. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to Lost in Revision, Season 3, Episode 2, brought to you by pure spite. At least for me. I'm here, as always, with two of my favorite humans, Angel and Polly. How are you today, Angel?
Well, I'm going to do a slight correction because actually we are entering the time of year where we are realistically brought to you by Gin-Gins. I am already having to pop them like religiously to keep my throat in action. But anyway.
Dirty minds.
I taught with a massive headache today, and one of my students handed me the sweetest, "You got this," supportive note on her way out of class. I mean, she actually said more than that. It was genuinely one of the best student notes I have ever gotten. I was a puddle of tears. I may have quite a few students who test my soul on a daily basis, but fortunately, I also have some who definitely feed it.
Aw, that's awful about the headache, but I am super happy that you got a little silver lining with your storm cloud. How about you, Polly? No headaches, I hope?
No headaches. I'm figuring out my work-life balance. You know, school in the daytime and work at night with over an hour commute in between doesn't leave much time for sleep. I think last week in 4 days I got 3 hours of sleep at one point. A new job might help. I'm starting at Cracker Barrel after Thanksgiving, which is only 10 minutes from school, and they're not open overnight, so no third shift.
No overnights is good when you have other people around who need you during daylight hours. I am kind of a night owl, so when it's just me, I don't mind night hours, but you have family and kids and stuff.
No, if it was just me, I'd prefer the third shift.
Yeah, but work-life balance. I hear about that lovely myth at professional development all the time, but I've yet to meet anyone who has actually achieved it.
Yeah, the person that always gave us the work-life balance speeches before I accidentally retired was the one who consistently wanted people to prioritize work and also work from home without logging their hours.
That's not illegal.
It's very illegal. I was a federal employee, so I'm happy to never have to hear from her again. And moving on, why don't you tell us a little bit about the history and culture of this story?
As is often the case, while preparing for this episode did send me down a rabbit hole of research, I discovered so many things I never knew, not only about this story, but about an author I had never even heard of before. It seems that roughly 100 years before Charles Perrault published the version of Puss in Boots that is most popular, the story was first told by an Italian author named Giovanni Straparola in the year 1550. His version is titled Constantino Fortunato, which is the name of the young man who inherited the cat. It was published in a collection of stories titled The Facetious
Sorry.
The Facetious Knights. Good night. The Facetious Knights.
Hey, you did it.
Yay!
I might have to leave some of that in.
Apparently, this book has participants of a 13-night party in the island of Murano near Venice. They tell each other stories that vary from the bawdy to the fantastic every night. It contains the first known written versions of many fairy tales.
Cool. That reminds me of the 1001 Arabian Nights, which is another collection of wild and fanciful tales supposedly told consecutively by a very clever storyteller to divert rather than to entertain.
Nice. Interestingly enough, I found a reference to the Brothers Grimm working from a French translation of Facetious Knights that
You did it again!
that claimed the Italian author had gotten the stories from 10 ladies. As far as I can make out with the help of Google Translate, with some of the French and Italian, some of the stories in Straparola huge book of tales are collected and told in his own style. But many, including Fortunato, were his actual own creations.
That's really cool. I will totally embrace the women author theory.
Yeah, it sounds realistic.
Yeah.
I went ahead and read the more famous Charles Perrault version for today's episode, but I did end up ordering a copy of Facetious Nights.
Now, if only you could say it.
And the thing is that I use that word all the time. It is one of my favorite words. Facetious is such a great word. I don't know why I'm having trouble saying it.
It's a fantastic word, and you are exhausted.
I am exhausted.
But it's still funny. I can't wait to hear more about Facetious Nights. It sounds really fun.
It sounds like a great con. We should start a con and call it Facetious Nights. And have it Nights with a K.
So that people understand she means convention.
Oh. What did I say?
You just said con.
And we're gonna run a con.
I need to clarify that we all met at a con.
At a convention, yes.
At a convention.
Many, many years ago.
I'm only running a con if there's Mini Coopers involved.
Okay. I am too tired to be doing this and having it recorded for all posterity, just for the record.
The show must go on. So let's move on to the reading of the story. And then we can discuss it. We can discuss it after.
Puss in Boots by Charles Perrault. There was a miller who left no more estate to the 3 sons he had than his mill, his donkey, and his cat. The partition was soon made. Neither the scrivener nor attorney were sent for. They would soon have eaten up all the poor patrimony. The eldest had the mill, the second the donkey, and the youngest nothing but the cat. The poor young fellow was quite comfortless at having so poor a lot. "My brothers," said he, "may get their living handsomely enough by joining their stocks together. But for my part, when I have eaten up my cat and made me a muff of his skin, I must die with hunger." The cat, who heard all of this, but made as if he did not, said to him with a grave and serious air, "Do not thus afflict yourself, my good master. You have only to give me a bag and get a pair of boots made for me, that I may scamper through the dirt and the brambles, and you shall see that you have not so bad a portion of me as you imagine." Though the cat's master did not build very much upon what he said, he had, however, often seen him play a great many cunning tricks to catch rats and mice, as when he used to hang by the heels or hide himself in the meal and make as if he were dead, so that he did not altogether despair of his affording him some help in his miserable condition. When the cat had what he asked for, he booted himself very gallantly, and putting his bag about his neck, he held the strings of it in his 2 forepaws, and went into a warren where there was great abundance of rabbits. He put bran and sow thistle into his bag, and stretched himself out at length as if he had been dead. He waited for some young rabbit, not yet acquainted with the deceits of the world, to come and rummage his bag for what he had put into it. Scarce was he lain down, but he had what he wanted. A rash and foolish young rabbit jumped into his bag, and Monsieur Puss, immediately drawing close the strings, took and killed him without pity. Proud of his prey, he went with it to the palace, and asked to speak with his majesty. He was showed up the stairs into the king's apartment. "I have brought you, sir, a rabbit of the warren which my noble lord, the Marquis of Carabas," for that was the title which Puss was pleased to give his master, "has commanded me to present to your majesty from him." "Tell thy master," said the king, "that I thank him, and that he does me a great deal of pleasure." Another time he went and hid himself among some standing corn, holding still his bag open. And when a brace of partridges ran into it, he drew the strings and so caught them both. He went and made a present of these to the king, as he had done before of the rabbit which he took in the warren. The king, in like manner, received the partridges with great pleasure, and ordered him some money. The cat continued for 2 or 3 months, thus to carry his majesty from time to time game of his master's taking. One day in particular, when he knew for certain that the king was to take the air along the riverside with his daughter, the most beautiful princess in the world, he said to his master, "If you will follow my advice, your fortune is made, for you have nothing else to do, but go and wash yourself in the river. In that part I shall show you, and leave the rest to me." The Marquis of Carabas did what the cat advised him to, without knowing why or wherefore. While he was washing, the king passed by, and the cat began to cry out as loud as he could, "Help! Help! My lord Marquis of Carabas is drowning!" At this noise the king put his head out of the coach window, and finding it was the cat who had so often brought him such good game, he commanded his guards to run immediately to the assistance of his lordship the Marquis of Carabas. As they were drawing the poor marquis out of the river, the cat came up to the coach, and told the king that while his master was washing, there came by some rogues, who went off with his clothes, though he cried out, "Thieves! Thieves!" several times, as loud as he could. This cunning cat had hidden them under a great stone. The king immediately commanded the officers of his wardrobe to run and fetch one of his best suits for the Lord Marquis of Carabas. The king received him with great kindness, and as the fine clothes he had given him extremely set off his good mien, for he was well made and very handsome in his person, the king's daughter took a secret inclination to him, and the Marquis of Carabas had no sooner cast 2 or 3 respectful and somewhat tender glances, but she fell in love with him to distraction. The king would needs have him come into his coach and take part of the airing. The cat, quite overjoyed to see his project begin to succeed, marched on before, and meeting with some countrymen who were mowing a meadow, he said to them, "Good people, you who are mowing, if you do not tell the king that the meadow you mow belongs to my lord Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped as small as mincemeat." The king did not fail asking of the mowers to whom the meadow they were mowing belonged. "To my lord Marquis of Carabas," they answered all together, for the cat's threats had made them terribly afraid. "Truly a fine estate," said the king to the Marquis of Carabas. "You see, sir," said the Marquis, "this is a meadow which never fails to yield a plentiful harvest every year." The master cat, who still went on before, met with some reapers, and said to them, "Good people, you who are reaping, if you do not tell the king that all this corn belongs to the Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped as small as mincemeat." The king, who passed by a moment after, would needs know to whom all that corn, which he then saw, did belong. "To my lord Marquis of Carabas," replied the reapers, and the king again congratulated the Marquis. The master cat, who went always before, said the same words to all he met, and the king was astonished at the vast estates of the lord Marquis of Carabas. Monsieur Puss came at last to a stately castle, the master of which was an ogre, the richest had ever been known, for all the lands which the king had then gone over belonged to this castle. The cat, who had taken care to inform himself who this ogre was and what he could do, asked to speak with him, saying he could not pass so near his castle without having the honor of paying his respects to him. The ogre received him as civilly as an ogre could do, and made him sit down. "I have been assured," said the cat, "that you have the gift of being able to change yourself into all sorts of creatures you have a mind to. You can, for example, transform yourself into a lion or elephant and the like." "This is true," answered the ogre very briskly, "and to convince you, you shall see me now become a lion." Puss was so sadly terrified at the sight of a lion so near him that he immediately got into the gutter, not without abundance of trouble and danger because of his boots, which were ill-suited for walking upon the tiles. A little while after, when Puss saw that the ogre had resumed his natural form, he came down and owned he had been very much frightened. "I have been moreover informed," said the cat, "but I know not how to believe it, that you also have the power to take on the shape of the smallest animals. For example, to change yourself into a rat or a mouse. But I must own to you, I take this to be impossible." "Impossible!" cried the ogre. "You shall see that presently," and at that same time changed into a mouse and began to run about the floor. Puss no sooner perceived this, but he fell upon him and ate him up. Meanwhile the king, who saw as he passed this fine castle of the ogres, had a mind to go into it. Puss, who heard the noise of his majesty's coach running over the drawbridge, ran out and said to the king, "Your majesty is welcome to this castle of my lord Marquis of Carabas." "What? My lord Marquis?" cried the king. "And does this castle also belong to you? There can be nothing finer than this court, and all the stately buildings which surround it. Let us go into it, if you please." The Marquis gave his hand to the princess, and followed the king, who went up first. They passed into a spacious hall, where they found a magnificent collation which the ogre had prepared for his friends, who were that very day to visit him, but dared not enter, knowing the king was there. His majesty was perfectly charmed with the good qualities of my lord Marquis of Carabas, as was his daughter, who had fallen violently in love with him, and seeing the vast estate he had possessed, said to him, after having drank 5 or 6 glasses, "It will be owing to yourself only, my lord Marquis, if you are not my son-in-law." The Marquis, making several low bows, accepted the honor which his majesty conferred upon him, and forthwith, that very same day, married the princess. Puss became a great lord, and never ran after mice any more. Well, only for his diversion. Now, the moral. How advantageous it may be, by long descent of pedigree, to enjoy a great estate. Yet knowledge how to act, we see, joined with consummate industry, nor wonder ye thereat, doth often prove a greater boon, as should be to young people known. And there's another moral. If the son of a miller so soon gains the heart of a beautiful princess, and makes her impart sweet languishing glances, eyes melting for love, it must be remarked of fine clothes how they move, and that youth, a good face, a good air, and good mien, are not always indifferent mediums to win the love of the fair, and gently inspire the flames of sweet passion and tender desire. The end.
are back. So, what is your favorite part or version of this story? The terrible security at the king's palace had me cracking up.
Makes you wonder just how beloved is this king?
Right? And he's talking to a cat, and he's extremely happy about getting a rabbit and some birds. Like
that kind of makes you wonder about the kitchens at the palace.
the kitchens and the huntsmen, and
Maybe it's just his last name was King.
I think we're onto something.
I love the connection between Puss in the story and Puss in Shrek. Like, instead of beating the ogre, he helped him. So, because DreamWorks, they always turn everything around. The tactic of claiming his master had been set upon by thieves and robbed is reminiscent of when Puss and Donkey robbed the nobleman and his son in their carriage and belongings, which is a hilarious scene.
Yeah.
But it's just turned around backward. But, the entire concept of Shrek, is a fractured fairy tale.
That is very true. I was able to read the Constantino Fortunato version, and I absolutely loved it. In that one, the cat is a fairy in disguise, and it is the mother who left her kneading trough, her pastry board, and the cat to each of her 3 sons. I mean, come on, it makes so much more sense that it was a mother bequeathing a cat to a beloved son. Constantino never...
if it was told by women.
Yes, especially if it was told by women. But this one wasn't. This one was actually the author's story.
So he says.
Yeah, so he says.
Constantino never actually threatened the cat or anything. He was just so sad, and the cat wanted to comfort him and promised to help him. The rest of the story is very similar to this, with the whole meeting the king and tricking the king into thinking that Constantino was rich and all of that sort of stuff. And he ends up marrying the king's daughter. All the usual Puss in Boots shenanigans. It's just, I liked Constantino's personality more.
The real con is the cat.
The real con was the cat. But it also made more sense to me that the cat was a fairy. All of the things that the cat was able to do just makes so much more sense if the cat is actually a fairy.
Except for threatening the villagers. That's accurate to cats.
I know, it's accurate to fairies, too.
Depending on the fairy.
Right?
I would be a lot more intimidated as a townsperson or harvester or whatever if a fairy showed up and threatened me than if a talking cat showed up and threatened.
Talking cat carries a lot of weight.
I was going to say, if a talking cat showed up, you would probably just kind of assume it was a fairy. I think that assumption is made in a lot of fairy tales where people have talking animals and they're like, oh, this must be fae. Shrug.
So was Balaam's donkey a fairy?
In a way. I mean, it was...
I don't know. That donkey was under a lot of duress.
The only person that could understand the donkey was Balaam. And if a donkey just randomly started talking to you, wouldn't you just believe it?
I would give him some credence.
Right?
I would check myself for unauthorized medical consumptions.
Or head injuries.
Yeah.
So what was your least favorite part or version of this story?
There is a horrible computer animated film that my kids watched years back. Somebody else put it on for them. I don't even know where she found it. It might have been the true story of Puss in Boots, but honestly, it was so bad that it's difficult to even find it. The animation was bad, the voice acting was worse, and the story was distorted from the original and not in a clever or entertaining way. It was very bad.
So you're not talking about the Shrek adjacent movie?
No,
okay.
Not even a little. No, that was highly amusing. I'd watch it again. No, this was like, I don't know, some French travesty. I don't know.
There was a while there in animation where there was this trend of making classic tales in the absolute cheapest way possible and just flooding television channels with them. And it was horrific. My kids kept finding them all the time, and I kept turning them off.
It was like early 90s or late 90s film student computer animation quality.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the learning curve.
It was bad. Very bad.
So my least favorite part was that the king seems to be highly illiterate of his own lands, especially the ones that are right next to his palace. it was hard not to draw some parallels to current politics and spiral a little bit mentally. So that's my least favorite part for today, subject to change.
I don't know. He kind of sounds like the sort of king who doesn't know what a tariff is.
That's okay. A lot of people don't know what a tariff is.
Obviously.
I got to find out.
Oh boy. Ugh. So
See? Spiraling. Now you're
Spiraling.
there with me.
In the grim version of the tale, I really didn't like the doofus planning to eat the cat and make a muff out of his skin. If I'd been the cat, I'd have just vanished into the trees and left him to his own miserable existence. Dude did not deserve such an awesome furry companion.
Right? The cat probably could have just married the princess himself without that much effort.
Yeah. Then the story gets banned by the Catholic Church for bestiality.
Well, it was a fae. If the cat married the princess, the fae would just change form. Come on.
Oh, you know, then the fae becomes a demon, and it's still banned by the Catholic.
The Catholic Church totally banned fae stuff as well.
Where do you think Beauty and the Beast came from? The cat became a dude so he could marry the girl.
Okay, now we're rolling this way back to season 1 where I had the conspiracy theory of all the fairy tales, and Shrek didn't help us with that. All the fairy tales being
true.
Intertwined. So,
I missed the version of Beauty and the Beast where everything was turned into animals, and there were like monkeys in the castle and helper pigs in the garden. I guess. Anyway, wrong story.
Right, we already did that one.
Yeah.
Revisit it. So, moving on from that topic real quick. So, what are the original lessons that you think this story was trying to convey? It was super helpful of them to include the moral at the end. It does seem to imply that the cat's trickery, threats, and lies was industrious, and that clothes make the man, which is another sad parallel to today.
Yeah.
Sorry, Al. I'm not helping.
I don't know. The cat pulled a pretty good con. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to say that a cat is a better inheritance than a mill or a donkey. But seriously, you may find yourself in low estate, but if you have clever and helpful friends, maybe they can help pull you up. You know, trust your friends. You don't have to do it alone. When you find success, remember who helped you get there.
True.
That would be nice. Some people with good memories would be nice. There's commentary. Like I said, I went down the research rabbit hole with this one, and I found a commentary on this story where they claim that the moral of the story was, may God save you from the rich who become poor and from the beggar who has worked his way up.
That sounds very classist.
Yes. They seem to feel that the cat having to help the idiot beggar to get a better station in life was pointing out how undeserving the man was because he didn't have the actual wit or social grace to support the elevated position he acquired. Now, under normal circumstances, I would be, no. A man who works hard for what he earns deserves the accolades that he has worked for, regardless of where he came from, regardless of who his parents were. But in this instance, in the instance of this one story, I have to say, the dude was an idiot. And yeah, he didn't deserve any of the elevated position that he acquired.
Now, give him some credit. He worked really hard at staying out of the way and doing nothing. I mean, that is the best contribution some people can make.
We didn't really get his perspective. Like, we only heard the cat's perspective, and you know how cats feel about people.
Like he swam in the river, and then he stood there looking pretty so that the princess fell in love with him.
And he got some new clothes out of the deal by looking pretty.
That's because you didn't read the other story.
No.
Okay.
I did not do my homework, teacher.
I read 3 different versions, okay? There is a French version of this story, not Charles Watt, but another version of this story where the dude actually speaks and the cat is constantly telling him to just shush, just don't speak.
Okay. I'm going to put put in the theory that this actually was not written by a dude. This story was written by a woman. He has totally stolen this.
Or a cat.
Yeah,
because the whole
It's
thing with
written
the
by a
clothes, when
cat.
he takes off the rags and everything and he puts them in a pile and he puts on the fancy clothes, he's constantly worrying that someone's going to come and steal his rags, that his rags need to be guarded. And the cat is just like, shush, would you just stop talking?
I'm hearing strains of "I'm Just Ken" playing in the background.
But if that's the only clothes you have, then yeah.
I would be mad if somebody stole my broken pair of jeans.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can dig
But would you be worrying about it while you're sitting at the fancy meal that your nice new clothes enabling you to eat?
Oh, see.
Oh,
You
absolutely,
didn't tell
absolutely,
us in that
because-
order.
Yeah, see, I'm sitting here in somebody else's clothes, and they're touching me, and all I can think about is my favorite pair of jeans sitting over there, and nobody's watching them, and somebody's going to steal them and make rags out of them, and those are my jeans.
Yeah, no.
Those are my clothes.
I'm thinking of the rags and not of favorite jeans. And yes, the guy was silly for that. But if it was his favorite pair of jeans, then I'm with Polly.
I've never had rags that were my favorites. So I just, no.
I've had
no.
some terribly holy jeans.
I had a rugby shirt that was returning to its component molecules before I got rid of it.
But anyway, the guy, okay, the guy who did not earn any of what he got, he very much reminded me of a motto in business, that managers seem to always get promoted to the level of their incompetence.
Well, yeah, you put the people in charge that can't cause the problems that people who are knowledgeable can cause.
That's actually like a working model that the business world uses, where when somebody does a good job, they get promoted, and that continues until they get to a job that they can't do well, and so they no longer do a good job, so they never get promoted again, so they're just stuck.
Right at the level of their incompetence.
That
Yeah.
is
Yes, yeah.
not my experience with the federal government. They just promote people to get them out of the office so that they don't have to deal with them anymore. And they
Oh.
promote them up until they can't do damage anymore. And that's literally our government. So you're welcome.
Wow.
Yep. Hey, I'm retired now. I can say that stuff.
So instead of incompetence, they promote them to ineffectiveness.
Yes.
Wow.
Like, the people at the top don't do anything. And if they're not good team builders, then everything just collapses.
Explain Grace Hopper then.
I don't know who Grace Hopper is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I won't Google it. I don't need that right now. Don't you put that on me, Ricky Bobby.
She was an admiral in the Pentagon.
They
They never managed to promote her as far as ineffectiveness.
Did y'all hear? Okay, I'm gonna move off of her because she's probably gonna make me sad. But I'm gonna say, did y'all hear that Harriet Tubman is now an official general?
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Since she actually is the first woman in U.S. history to be in charge of a military operation, they promoted her.
That's pretty cool.
And I'm very
Good for
excited about this because she actually was in charge of actual military operations. This is not just a title. Like, she should have had that way back. And it's very
definitely. Everybody should Google Admiral Grace Hopper. She made her own trouble.
I'm scared now. I'm very scared.
It won't make you sad.
Okay.
She's my favorite pirate.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's okay then. I was going to say,
she's my favorite American pirate.
bringing us back, reeling us back in. What do you think the modern lesson would be?
That king could have stood to employ a little fact checking. You know, if a celebrity that you've never heard of suddenly appears as an influential major player, you might want to find out who he was before you heard of him and wonder how he got so prominent all of a sudden.
Oh my God, yes. Yes, a major lesson from this is to do a better job of screening and checking the references on people you decide to promote. And always do a background check before deciding to marry your daughter off to the entertaining fellow you just met just because he appears to be rich.
But Daddy, he's so pretty.
I mean, like, if you got the money to marry the pretty guy, go for it.
You have to talk to him sooner or later.
Not really. So I want to bring up an episode of Citation Needed that really hit on this, and it's one I listened to today. And it's about Carlos Kaiser. And he's a soccer player who conned his way into being a soccer player for like over a decade, and he never scored a goal and he barely ever played.
What?
Look that up too.
Oh my God. We're sending everybody to the
Homework.
interwebs.
Grace Hopper and Carlos Kaiser.
Go search for this. Carlos Kaiser. It's Carlos, common spelling. Kaiser, Kaiser. And Citation Needed did a really good synopsis.
Hilariously, the only person not handing out homework is the teacher.
I don't actually hand out homework in my class.
That's
Oh,
good.
you're a good teacher.
That's good. Homework has been proven so many times to not be effective.
It's
so.
not effective. Now,
You
if they
should
don't,
just
if they
do the
don't
work in
finish stuff, they can do it there. Well, some of it they can do at home with the way we're doing it. But there's so many live labs and everything, and it's all their data in their notebook that's in class. So a lot of stuff they couldn't even do at home if they wanted to. It's all just we're very hands-on in science these days.
That's even better.
I had my kids out doing sunlight and temperature readings, and they were little pods of kids running all over, testing the air and getting lux readings of the incoming light and the reflected light. And I was so proud of them.
That sounds so fun. So, in closing, what do you think happened after the story?
You know, I hope the miller's son turned Marquis hired a caretaker for Puss, because there's nothing a tomcat loves more than a harem of queens, and that just results in clouders everywhere. I have 10 cats at my house, and let me tell you, it gets to be a mess sometimes. The hair alone. Eesh.
Yeah, hopefully if they could talk, they could kind of take care of themselves a little bit better, though.
A queen turns a tomcat into an idiot.
I mean, that's normal male behavior.
I like to think that Puss transferred his allegiance to the lady of the house and let the dude start making a social pariah of himself, while he made sure everyone showered love and affection on the poor woman who had been saddled with such an idiot for a husband.
But at least he was pretty.
Pretty isn't everything. I keep telling women this.
I mean, for a princess,
If he can sit down over there and be quiet
right?
and look pretty, that's all.
She could have her arm candy. It's fine.
I don't buy into the eye candy. It's all about the mind, the heart, the soul. They've got to be a person of quality.
You're talking about a real like relationship, but like I don't even want a relationship. So a little bit of eye candy is fine. I don't want to have to deal with another person. It's only that. Just be the eye candy, and I'm good. Thanks for joining us today. Check us out on Patreon. You can help us meet our small goal of breaking even and covering our expenses. Your support helps pay for all of the things that podcasting requires and helps keep this show alive and growing. If you can't afford to support us financially, go give us a good review, subscribe or follow, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to fact check us and offer suggestions to make our show better for you. You can also send us an email at lostinrevisionpodcast@gmail.com.
There's a lot more waiting for us all at the end of the road.